Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janababa Giridvaridhari. Gopi Janababa Giridvaridhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janarajana. Yamuna Tira Padachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Giridvaridhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnu. So there's Shishimare Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj. Jaya Vishnu Bhavam Sapadad. Astatara Sata Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Sajida. Go Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 20, Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena, text 21. Saadi Rajo Rachi Chanjali Harim Vilokatum Nashakarashu Lochana Nakinchano vacha sabhaspa viklavo. Hridopaguyamum adharavastita. Saari rajo rachichanjali harim. Bilokitum nashakara srulochana. Nakinchano vacha sabhaspa viklavo. Hridopaguyamum adharavastita. Saari rajo rachichanjali harim. Bilokitum nashakara srulochana. Nakinchano vacha sabhaspa viklavo. Hridopaguyamum adharavastita. Vaishnavis. Sa, he, Adi Raja, the original king. Rachita Anjali, with folded hands. Him, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bilokatum, to look upon. Na, not. Ashakat, was able. Asru Lochana, his eyes full of tears. Na, not. Kinchana, anything. Uvacha, spoke. Sa, he. Bashpa Viklava, his voice being choked up. Rida, with his heart. Upaguya, embracing. Amum, the Lord. Adat, he remained. Avastita, standing. Translation, the original king, Maharaj Prithu, his eyes full of tears and his voice faltering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way with folded hands. Purport. Just as Krishna is addressed in the Brahma Samhita as Adi Purusha, the original personality, so King Prithu, being an empowered incarnation of the Lord, is referred to in this verse as Adi Raja, the original or ideal king. He was a great devotee and at the same time a great hero who conquered over all undesirable elements in his kingdom. He was so powerful that he was equal in fighting to Indra, the king of heaven. He gave protection to his citizens, keeping them engaged in pious activities and devotion to the Lord. He did not collect a single cent of taxes from the citizens without being able to give them protection from all calamities. The greatest calamity in life is to become godless and therefore sinful. If the state head or king allows the citizens to become sinful by indulging in illicit sex life, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, then the king is responsible and he has to suffer the resultant sequence of reactions for the sinful lives of the citizens because he levies taxes on them unnecessarily. These are the principles for a ruling power. And because Maharaj Prithu observed all the principles for a ruling chief, he is referred to here as Adi Raja. Even a responsible king like Maharaj Prithu can become a pure devotee of the first order. We can distinctly see from King Prithu's behavior how he became ecstatic, both externally and internally, in pure devotional service. Just today, we have seen in the newspapers of Bombay that the government is going to repeal its prohibition laws. Ever since Gandhi's non-cooperation movement, Bombay has been kept dry and has not allowed its citizens to drink. But unfortunately, the citizens are so clever that they have increased illicit distillation of liquor. And although not being sold publicly in shops, liquor is being sold in public lavatories and similar abnormal places. Unable to check such illicit smuggling, the government has decided to manufacture the liquor at cheaper prices so that people can have their supply of intoxication directly from the government instead of purchasing it in public lavatories. The government failed to change the hearts of the citizens from indulging in sinful life. So instead of losing the taxes they collect to inflate the treasury, they have decided to manufacture liquor to supply to the citizens who hanker after it. This kind of government cannot check the resultant actions of sinful life, namely war, pestilence, famine, earthquakes, and similar other disturbances. Nature's law is that as soon as there are discrepancies in regard to the law of God, which are described in Bhagavad Gita as dharma shagalani, or disobedience to the laws of nature or God, as once there will be heavy punishment in the form of sudden outbreaks of war. We have recently experienced a war between India and Pakistan. Within 14 days, there have been immense losses of men and money, and there have been disturbances to the entire world. These are the reactions of sinful life. The Krishna conscious movement is meant to make people pure and perfect. If we become even partially pure, as described in the Bhagavatam, Nasta Prayesha Bhadreshu, by development of Krishna consciousness, then lust and greed, the material diseases of the citizens, will be reduced. This can be made possible simply by broadcasting the pure message of Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna consciousness. Big commercial and industrial firms have contributed many thousands of rupees to a defense fund that burns the money in the form of gunpowder. But unfortunately, If they are asked to contribute liberally to advance the Krishna consciousness movement, they are reluctant. Under the circumstances, the world will periodically suffer from such upsurges and outbreaks of war, which are the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. Translation again. The original king, Maharaja Prithu, his eyes full of tears and his voice faltering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way, folded hands. Om Agana Chimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militang Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just one of the unlimited glories of Srimad Bhagavatam is that you see a standard for everything in existence. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yajadat Charitri Shreshtas. Whatever the standard bearer does, the people in general follow. Bhagavatam equips you with the knowledge that there's a standard for everything, for every phase, facet, and aspect of existence. So here you have Maharaj Prithu, known as Adiraj, the original king, or the standard bearer, the ideal. Unless you know what is the ideal, you'll be just groping in the darkness, not knowing what is good, better, and best. And certainly you won't know what is the worst. Hearing about Maharaj Prithu elevates your expectations beyond the material to the spiritual platform. And by hearing about Maharaj Prithu, you understand how the spiritual and the material is integrated. That integration of the spiritual and material is often on the mind of curious, spiritually curious persons. Just like when I was speaking in Hamilton Friday night, shockingly big program, 60 persons crammed into a house. And I was speaking about material happiness and criticizing it in my usual way. And so, yes, I'm provoking people. I'm trying to move them to inquire, to reflect. So sure enough, the usual question comes, well, you're criticizing material happiness, but don't we need a bit of that? And don't we need to act materially and pursue some material goals? So I replied that the bhakti process certainly includes taking care of your mind and body. But what's the purpose of that care for your body and mind? The purpose is the most important thing. We take care of the equipment Krishna has given us for the purpose of becoming Krishna conscious. So often it is a fact that when people hear a critique of material happiness, which even mundane social scientists do these days, they just have nothing better to offer, of course. So often when people hear such critiques, they feel a little uncomfortable, just a little, because what else do they have? And they want to cling to it so tightly. And when they hear the facts, when they hear the realities, the nature of the illusion, it can make some squirm a bit. I've noticed by listening to Srila Prabhupada that he was lion-like in his presentation about how material existence, material happiness, material endeavors are all useless. But then in his discussions, personal one-on-one or small group discussions with guests and visitors and even devotees, then he would give ground. All right, what you're doing just needs you to add Krishna. Everything will be all right. So I've adopted the same strategy. That be firm and bold in presentation, but then in personal discussion or in questions, when questions come, then you give ground, so to speak. Yes, yes. We can immediately, most persons immediately cannot drop material happiness. After all, we have these material bodies and minds, we're human beings. So whatever you do, just add more Krishna. Gradually, you'll get to the goal. So Prithu Maharaj is Adiraj, the standard. And as we said, he's showing the integration of the material and spiritual. As Prabhupada writes in the purport, even a responsible king like Maharaj Prithu can become a pure devotee of the first order. We can distinctly see from King Prithu's behavior how he became ecstatic, both externally and internally, in pure devotional service. So even though he's such a king, chief executive, still he demonstrates how to be a pure devotee of the first order. We've been explaining how Lord Chaitanya in Chaitanya Charitamrita says that anyone who chants the Hare Krishna just once is the best among all human beings. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains that even a neophyte, if the neophyte devotee accepts that Krishna is non-different from his name, that neophyte devotee is classified as a pure devotee, even though a neophyte. So there are there's a range of being a pure devotee. There's a spectrum. And even a neophyte can, according to Shastra, be considered a pure devotee if he or she is firmly convinced that Krishna is the same as his name. But then, of course, there are higher and higher levels of pure devotional service, because love and purity have no ceiling, no limitation. But if you can fully accept and act on that acceptance that Krishna is the same as his name, even though you're a neophyte, you're considered a pure devotee. But here we see about Prithu Maharaj. He's a pure devotee of the first order, of the highest rank. So much so that here he is in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's embracing the Lord within his heart. He can't see the Lord very clearly, and he can't speak properly. He just embraces the Lord within his heart, and he's standing there with folded hands. Another part of the purport, a long part, as you heard, talks about some current events of the time as Prabhupada was writing this purport. He talks about the government of Mumbai stopping or conceding or allowing now that liquor is sold. And Prabhupada's pointing out, well, ever since Gandhi's time, Mumbai's been dry, no liquor, no citizens can drink. But as you heard, tragic, but humorous, still tragic. The citizens are so clever that they sell and buy the liquor in public lavatories. If you've ever been to a public lavatory in Mumbai, you'd have to have strong motivation to go inside. And evidently the liquor supplies that strong motivation to go inside a public lavatory, because at that time, that was the only place you could get it. It's not like that anymore. I noticed myself, and I may have mentioned it before, when I'm flying out of the Calcutta airport, the new Calcutta airport, I used to be able to, once clearing security and going to the gate section, I used to be able to go upstairs. There's an upstairs, and there was nothing up there. And I used to be able to chant in peace. Now, when I go up there in that formerly empty space, what are there? 4 pubs, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 pubs. An Irish pub, a German pub. So this is what's going on. So just see how Prabhupada is weaving the material realities with the spiritual message. He says, unable to check such illicit smuggling, the government has decided to manufacture the liquor. It's going to manufacture the liquor itself at cheaper prices, and that way have a monopoly. You want liquor? Got to buy the government liquor, which will have taxes put on it. And that way, and this is a very important point, the government failed to change the hearts of the citizens, but it'll make money off the liquor. Can't change the hearts, but it can take in revenue. And as Prabhupada writes, use it to inflate the treasury. So this is a crucial point. The failure to change the hearts of the citizens. The chief executive is held responsible for that. And you hear now the complete picture that how do you expect war, pestilence, famine, earthquakes, and similar other disturbances, pandemics, how do you expect that to stop if the government can't check the reactions of sinful life? How can you expect that? So you can beat your chest and yes, you can march up and down. But until there's a check on sinful activity, you can't stop such disruptions, calamities, disturbances. That is nature's law. So you go on to hear about another current event of the time when Prabhupada was writing the purport. These events are not current, whether the liquor sales in Mumbai or now you're going to hear about the war between India and Pakistan, but they are examples of the fundamental point that unless the government stops the reactions of sinful life, there always will be such disturbances. Whether you think there's a conspiracy or not, there is Maya. And unless there's some action taken to diminish the effect of Maya, you can be sure that there will be punishment. As we read, punishment in the form of sudden outbreaks of war. So the current event of the time was the war between India and Pakistan. And he describes that within 14 days, there have been immense losses of men and money. The whole world's disturbed. So what is the cause of this? International politics, failure of diplomacy? No, the cause is reactions of sinful life. So this may sound old-fashioned. Oh, because the people aren't good, because the people are naughty, therefore there's cyclones, therefore there are earthquakes, therefore there's war. No, we're human beings of the 21st century. We have our intellect, we have our strategies. We can make a major impact on the problems of today. Many young people who study at the university have this idea that along with partying, along with having a good time, I will study something that will make a little difference. Some think like that, and of course, some couldn't care less. But the point is that material efforts cannot solve material problems because material existence is inherently, essentially problematic because it originates from sinful activity. So this purport is not causing you to be pie in the sky and dreaming. It's causing you to get to the root of the problem. But many people will say, and even our devotees, our own devotees will say, but this Bhagavatam program is too ambitious. I mean, how many people are really going to take to it enough to stop the world's problems? We don't know the power of Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't know the power of the Hare Krishna mantra, how they are the presence of Krishna. So therefore, we read at the end of the purport, under the circumstances, the world will periodically suffer from such upsurges and outbreaks of war, which are the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. What do you think? Sounds sectarian, huh? The consequences of not being Krishna conscious. Well, you have to understand who is Krishna. You want to say such a statement? These problems will not be solved because they're the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. Then you need to know what is Krishna consciousness and why such a statement can be said. Otherwise, you'll take it as, well, in the back of your mind. You won't say it out loud, but in the back of your mind, you'll say, sounds kind of sectarian and fanatical to me. No, but I can't say that. You need to understand the science of Krishna, Krishna Tattva. Another aspect of this chapter is the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead upon Prithu and Prithu's pure bhakti. As happens often in Bhagavatam when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears, and this appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam, this appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually Chirodakashayi Vishnu, find out. And so benedictions are offered. You may ask from me any benediction you want, just like Nrsimhadeva told Prahlad. Those who attain my audience are never in want. Whatever you want, you can have. The same with Prithu Maharaj. He was offered a benediction. He had pleased the Lord by his forgiveness of Indra. Remember, Indra couldn't tolerate that Prithu was going to do 100 horse sacrifices. He was at 99 and going for 100, and Indra was freaking out, to say the least, because Indra has his post by virtue of such 100 horse sacrifices, Ashvamedha Yajna. So Indra was doing anything to stop Prithu's 100th horse sacrifice because Indra was afraid of losing his post. He's the Lord of heaven. Indra is the name of the post. The name of the particular person who occupies the post is Purandra. And he can be very uptight. who's trying to take my post, who's trying to surpass me. So in this way, motivated by such fear, he was causing irreligious disruptions, disguising himself as a sadhu and stealing the sacrificial horse. So Prithu couldn't do the yajna. He kept doing this again and again. Things reached a critical point in which Prithu was about to kill Indra. And so the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared, not simply to protect Indra, but also because he's pleased with Prithu. And Lord Brahma had intervened also. Lord Brahma told Prithu, just let Indra off the hook. Let him, don't do the 100th horse sacrifice. It's not necessary for you. You're a pure bhakta. Yes, you want to do these rituals for the sake of the citizens, so the ordinary citizen can see these yajnas. But for you, it's not necessary. Indra's attached. Let it be that way. So Brahma chose the path of least resistance. When there's an argument, you try to find out who's going to be reasonable here. And so Brahma knew it's not going to be Indra. Let me go for Prithu and convince him. So indeed, Prithu did that. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared and showed his pleasure upon Prithu, for Prithu conceding. So in this way, you get to see forgiveness. I mean, Indra had really caused a huge disturbance. He was disturbing Dharma by taking the cloth of a sadhu so he could steal the horse, and no one would kill a sadhu, so no one would bother him. But this is such a disturbance to religious principles. But Indra didn't care. He wanted what he wanted. For Prithu's ideal behavior, the Supreme Personality of God had offered him any benediction he wanted. And usually benedictions are what? Winning the lottery for $40 million. I briefly scan the New Zealand news every other day. And there's always, every day, the news of a, what is it called, Powerball or something? Some kind of lottery, and a story about a lottery winner. Astounded, a couple in Ashburton, astounded by their $20 million lotto win. And then they do an interview with the couple. Generally, the people want to remain anonymous. They don't want anyone else to know they have all that money. And, oh, now our life will be wonderful. We'll spend it all on our family. The recent one said, we'll still keep working though. So that's what people consider a benediction these days. Oh, when will I win the lottery? Sometimes I think, well, if someone wins the lottery and decides to give the money to Krishna, that would be glorious. Of course, we don't buy lottery tickets. So there was a case in Australia, maybe 20 years ago, where a, shall we say, it's the best way to say it, a not so practiced devotee bought a lottery ticket thinking, if I win, I'll give the money to Krishna. And he won. And he did give the money to the temple. There was another example in Texas, in the USA. One Indian gentleman had sporadically been coming to the temple. And then, unknown to anyone, because he was such a sporadic congregational visitor, he passed away and he left a will. And in his will, he didn't leave anything or much at all for his material family, but he left $20 million for the temple in his will. So the devotees were thinking that, his family is going to protest. We have to, even though it's a legal document, leaving it almost all to the temple, we don't want to get into a brawl, a legal brawl, and we want that the family is pacified. So the devotees made an offer to the family, we'll cut you in. And so they ran it by the legal chief, the state government legal chief of Texas, who supervises all such inheritance affairs. And the legal chief said, you can't give them anything, that's illegal. The deed, the trust document says that the inheritance goes to you. You cannot disobey this document. So what could the devotees do? They had to take all the money. It was interesting that he's the Attorney General of Texas. He said, what you're proposing is illegal. You can't give the money away to anyone else. You have to take it all. So those are the kind of benedictions we like to hear about. But in this chapter of the 4th canto, the point is made that the usual benediction for an intelligent human being is what? Swarga, go to the heavenly planets. We just, in our Kali Yuga concept of benediction, think, oh, just give me a big stash of money. But the real materialists want to go to Swargaloka. This Earth planet, as you know, is middle planetary system, Burloka. But there are 6 planetary systems above us and 7 below. In the whole universe, there's a total of 14 planetary systems. So the intelligent materialist wants to go to Swargaloka with Indra, enjoy heavenly delights. Then the smarter person thinks this material gratification is frustrating. It's temporary, it's limited. Let me do karma tyag. Let me renounce all karmic activity and become absorbed in metaphysical speculation, jnana yoga. And in that way, ultimately merge with Brahman. So that's the more intelligent person, but not intelligent enough to understand, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. I, the person, am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So those are the usual benedictions. Of course, they're the mystic yogis. They want mystic powers. And ultimately, they also want to merge into the Supreme. Neither the Gyanis nor the yogis want service. They don't want devotional service. Some of them think that you do bhakti for the purpose of developing your meditational prowess as you approach the goal of merging into the Supreme. And as you approach that goal of merging in the Supreme, you kick away your bhakti practices. They're no longer necessary because you are the Supreme. So these are the various other benedictions besides bhakti that can dazzle the mind of someone who has such attachments. But Prithu simply wants bhakti. He wants devotional service. And he convinces the Supreme Lord, please don't, just like Prahlad Maharaj said, don't tempt me with these material benedictions. I know you're doing it so I'll show the example, because I'm Adi Raja, the standard. So you want all living entities throughout the universe, not only human beings, but all types of creatures, you want them to see the standard of pure bhakti upheld. Nothing approaches the excellence, the super excellence of pure bhakti. So that is what Prithu Maharaj is demonstrating, besides showing what a real chief executive does. Cutting down on the miscreants, giving law and order so that what? People can enjoy sense gratification? No, law and order so people can progress in their spiritual life. Otherwise, as you heard in the purport, it is sinful for the government to collect taxes if it can't offer basic protection. And the most important protection the government should offer is protecting people, its people, from the reactions of sinful life. Any questions? Yes. Study the glories of the holy name. Think about it. Study the glories and think about it. And let that meditation shape your chanting practice. Even some days your mind is disturbed, still you know what the standard is and you pray to Krishna. Somehow may I approach that standard. The more you hear the glories of the holy name, the more that those glories start to inject themselves into you. Seems like it's not happening. I'm just reading this Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. A beautiful verse from the Padma Purana. The holy name of Krishna is like a touchstone, Chintamani. It's non-different from Krishna, eternal, eternally free from material contamination, just like Krishna. The embodiment of all spiritual taste, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. You may think just by reading that, I'm just reading it, I'm not tasting anything. But by hearing it and hearing it, reading it and reading it, the message, the information enters into you, not only the information, but the emotions too. But then you have to learn how to tolerate the illusory energy, which is standing next to you saying, you're never going to attain this. Who are you trying to fool? How long have you been trying to chant Hare Krishna with attention? It's not working for you. But with material life, you'll get instant results. But yeah, a little bit of hard work, and but that's all right. You'll have the results in your hand. Anything else? Yeah. Krishna's will is already there. It's the question of who gets the credit for being an instrument. Just like in the Shastra, it is said that the holy name will appear in every town and village. So before Prabhupada brought bhakti out of India, his godbrothers admitted that they thought the statement in the Shastra was just poetic. Nice exhortation, spiritual meditation. Yes, every town and village, his name will be heard. But they didn't take it literally until Prabhupada demonstrated the reality. So similarly, we may think, oh, this, when Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that Lord Chaitanya set off the Sankirtan movement in Navadvip, and from there it spread all over the world, and then will gradually spread all over the universe. We may think, oh, that's kind of enthusiastic talk, but the reality is we don't know what the reality is. Just like when Srila Prabhupada was informed that devotees wanted to make a temple in Auckland, he said, why just a temple in one city? About New Zealand, there should be a temple in every town. Now you know what that means in New Zealand, like Picton, 2,000 people, or Carterton, 2,000 people, but he had that particular vision. Not why just a temple in one city? Let there be one in every town in that country. And of course, before that, his first, what I consider his cardinal instruction was, get a farm. He said that's more important than, in fact, he said, don't build a temple out in the city, get a farm. First-class agricultural country. Milk products famous throughout the world, get a farm. We're trying. Anything else? Jai Srila Prabhu. Any what? The last part I couldn't hear. Hmm. The message is the same. You may wrap it differently, but the contents of the package is always the same. Hearing about Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, taking Krishna Prasad, chanting, dancing, taking Prasad, studying Srimad Bhagavatam. The content of the package always has to be there. Otherwise, what are we about? Just see Prabhupada's complete conviction that people are not Krishna conscious, therefore the world will periodically suffer from such outbreaks of war, catastrophes, so on and so forth. If we become even partially pure, as described in the Bhagavatam, Nastaprai Shabhadreshu, by development of Krishna consciousness, then lust and greed, the material diseases of the citizens, will be reduced. This can be made possible simply by broadcasting the pure message of Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna consciousness. So that content of the package always has to be there. Otherwise, what is so powerful enough to counteract the nescience of the day? No material methods will do that. We have to let Srimad Bhagavatam into the situation and let it work its inconceivable potencies, because it's the literary presence of Krishna. As far as kings or heads of government having the responsibility to induce their citizens to be Krishna conscious, just as spiritual masters do and parents do, yes, everything that you've mentioned is a huge responsibility. Of course, right in front of you is your son, Navajit Leela. So in that respect, currently you're doing okay. Prabhupada, let's face it, he had very little faith in the duration of the Western world as we know it now. We've got complete faith. Oh, they'll fix everything. They'll sort everything out. Let's not have this Armageddon talk. Let's not have this doomsday talk. Whether you think there's a conspiracy or not, the point is there are no material solutions. That's the point. No need for our devotees to start wrangling. Do you see what they are trying to do? They're trying to control this. They're trying to control your children. They. There's no need to get all caught up in that when the real enemy is the illusory energy. And how are you going to stop that enemy? It takes various forms. This political ideology, that economic ideology, but it's all the illusory energy. Yes. Yes. Speak louder, please. Bad acoustics in this temple. Well, you did a great job at the Auckland Uni at the program Thursday. You talked the talk to get the students to be relaxed, and you contexted the whole event. You were rapping very nicely. And that gave me the chance to just give it to them straight. So I wrote in on your coattails. That's the whole point. Why argue over direct or indirect? Do both. So you set the stage, and then I could do my thing and telling them you're just in Maya. I said that in fancy language, and they listened. Nice program. About 40 students came, which is for University of Auckland. That's a big crowd. Hamilton, they're more desperate. Nothing to do down there. Aucklanders are more, the scene is more spacey, like the weather. Either too hot, too cold. Weather can't make up its mind. Similarly, people can't make up their mind. So you spoke nicely, but you knew you weren't carrying the whole load on your shoulders, so you could be cordial. Welcome to our event, Sustainable Me Club, in which we discuss issues that pertain to wholesomeness and so on and so forth. And you were talking the talk, and the students were nodding. Yeah. Wholesomeness, sustainable me. Yeah. Getting in tune with, the whatever. Yeah. And then it was time for me to speak, and I gave it to them for 40 minutes. And we chanted Hare Krishna and took prasad. So my point is, why argue over direct or indirect? Do both at the same time. You have to give them something substantial. You may not do that in the first 5 minutes of the program, but somewhere along the line, you've got to deliver the goods. What do you think, Jai Sheila? Well, you told me, just like in dealing with your son, you couldn't like force feed him. You had to give him some space And then at the right time, the seed blossomed and you were there ready. I see a sprout. Been waiting 30 years. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.